Here we are at example 12 from our 5.17 notes. We're asked to basically state what is the difference between each of these. So just looking at the first one, we have negative x raised to the positive 20th power. Really what's going on here is you have a negative 1x, or negative 1 in front of the x, and the x has a power of 1. So ultimately, if you were to distribute that 20 to both items, you would end up then with negative 1 raised to the positive 20th power, x raised to the positive 20th power. And as a result, negative 1 raised to this even power of 20 is always just going to come out to be positive 1. And if you don't believe me, you can check that out in your calculator. But it should come out to be 1. I want to stress and emphasize, though, the parentheses when you enter that in the calculator, because that's really everything. In fact, that's really answering the question between this one and the second part. The x is also raised to the 20th, so he hasn't disappeared, still there. Now, for the second one, what you're saying is you have negative 1 on the outside times x raised to the 20th. Only the x is being raised to the 20th, not the negative. And so as a result, if you think back to like PEMDAS, you end up then with negative 1. There's nothing to really do in the parentheses. Then you move on to exponents. In this case, x raised to the 20th power would give you x to the 20th power. And then you would multiply that by negative 1 to then get negative x to the 20th. So notice, it is not the exact same thing as saying positive 1 x to the 20th. These two look really similar to one another, but are actually quite different. Moving on to the next one. What is the difference between these two? Well, in the first one, we have the entire quantity, 6x, being raised to the negative 4th power. And you could distribute that negative 4 as the exponent. We've talked about also the nice little bonus quick method where you pretty much just throw this 6x on the bottom and then raise that to the positive 4, and on top is 1, because again it has that negative exponent. And then distribute that negative into both items, or I'm sorry, distribute that 4 as the exponent into both items, giving you 1 over 6 to the 4th, x to the 4th. And then you can simplify that further. But what's different about the second one is we notice that only the x is being raised to the negative 4th. The 6 has an exponent, it's 1, but only x really has that negative exponent. So as a result, if you simplified this right one, you'd end up with 6 over, again, x has the negative exponent, so we're going to throw him on the bottom, giving him now a positive exponent. So the idea to really walk away from, and notice these are not the same thing, the main idea for example 12 is to really illustrate just how important either parentheses are, seeing the placements of negatives and where they're located, also really what has negative exponents and what don't. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're doing the homework, because parentheses are huge. That's really where you're going to see, especially like standardized testing, try and trip up people. Just making sure that you know what has an exponent, like which values have an exponent. And then, if that is a negative exponent, is it being applied to all the items or only some of them? So again, though, that is example 12. Be wary, pay very, very close attention to that on the homework, because I know they're going to be on there, and that's really the ultimate goal, is to like test and see if you recognize where those are at. Again, though, that is example 12 from our 5.1 set of notes.